So, welcome to your last day. We've actually covered all the content for the class, so this last session will just be pretty much an open Q&A about anything you had further questions on or any topics that you wanted to cover a little bit more in depth that we might have gone over in the past weeks. So feel free to post in chat or speak up and let me know if you guys have any questions about anything. Didn't prepare any questions. All right. If you can think of anything, I will keep the session open for a while. But I hope you enjoyed the class, and I hope you learned some things and had some fun with the sneaky projects. I'm looking forward to getting integrating those this afternoon and the next couple of days. So hope you had fun with it. I will go ahead and stop the recording, but if a question does pop up, like I said, I'll keep the session open until about 2. But if there aren't any questions by then, we'll close out. But feel free to pop back in here if you do think of something. All right, we have our first question. Looking into how to possibly create an ability template using scripting. Oof, that is a tough question because depending on what types of abilities or how in depth you want to go for the abilities, it can get pretty complex. If you're just talking about like a basic use one shot or use another shot and things, that's kind of what we were setting up with the enemy states. Those would be just more behaviors versus abilities, but we could give them an ability to, let's say, attack the player when it's within an attack range even. So I could go ahead and prototype that real quick for you. Let's go ahead and just create a basic ability here. Just call it ability. And you mentioned ability templates, so I will keep this base ability generic so that other abilities could be added or something like that. So we have our ability. And let's go ahead and add a couple of variables to track that would be pretty common for abilities. Let's add a bool, and we'll make these all serialized so they can be modified. Serialized bool, not capital. For if it has a cooldown, is cooldown based. And can't type today. We'll initialize that to true. Not tree. Why did it even let me type tree? We'll go ahead and create another serialized field for a float for cooldown time, or time cooldown. We'll initialize that and say they can use this ability every 2 seconds or so. Each ability will have an ability name. Oh, not page down. Why did they put the stupid page down button right next to an up arrow? Sorry, on a different keyboard today, so screwing up my typing. Serialized field for a string for ability name. Or we'll actually just have the abilities be self-named. That'll be a little bit easier, and we can then reinforce that dictionary use of how to store abilities. So cooldown, there typically be some sort of mana cost or stat change. So we'll add a float for mana cost. We'll say it's going to take 5 mana to use this basic ability. Then there's a few different things in starter update. We can set this up several different ways. I'm going to add a couple more things to this ability so that this is like when we press a key, we use this ability, then we can let it do its own update or whatever. So I will make these public. So that any child classes can specify whatever they need to do when they start the ability or whatever they need to do an update. I'm going to go ahead and I don't need on collision or anything like that. But that's our basic ability. That's all our other abilities will be referenced from. And we don't necessarily need to even attach this script to object. We'll just have it just be the a basic class that will add to our characters. Then I'm going to go to my agent and line endings. Yeah, I don't care. We can go ahead and add a list of abilities that the agents can use, or a dictionary of abilities. Dictionary. What key name we'll use? We'll use a string for the keys to look up the different abilities, and what the actual thing it'll store. Well, it's going to store ability classes. Call this abilities. And initialize the dictionary. New dictionary of string and ability type. And then in start, we can go ahead and fill out our abilities. Right now, we don't have any specific abilities. We just have the ability base class. So we would want to create another ability class. For purposes of demonstration, I'm going to just do it in the same script file. Normally, you would separate that out if you're working on a team and have multiple classes in the separate scripts. But we'll create another public class, and we'll call this melee. Oh my God, I'm blanking on how to spell melee. Is it 1 L or 2 L's? I'll just go with that, and somebody will probably correct me in chat. And then we'll have this derive from ability. We need access to these variables inside the child class, so we can set them to different things and actually use them for our starts and updates and things like that. So I don't necessarily want everything to know about this, or everybody to have access to change these values, so I will just keep it protected, that middle of the ground protection level. So protected, I believe we covered it before, but it allows children to modify it, but not just any class willy-nilly. And we'll go ahead and override start. And override did not pop up with the right thing. I want public override, and it's not going to let me do the start over. Oh, because there is no, I got rid of the other class. That's right. I don't need we're creating our own custom types of functions here. And I forgot to also label it as virtual. Virtual is the keyword needed. Virtual will be how we start our ability. Update will be how we run our ability. And we'll have an end ability as well. Public, virtual, void, end. Now, when we go to override, start, update, and end will be there. I will keep that base start there, even though it's doing nothing. It's completely empty, as we can see right here, just in case I do ever add anything to the basic abilities, maybe some like debug code to figure out which ability has been activated and things like that. I'll create a public override for our update and public override for an end. So we have some spots to put some functionality. And for this melee ability, we're going to need a couple of things in here to figure out. Oh no, internet's cutting out a little bit. We're going to need to initialize our variables. So we did initialize them all right here, but maybe our melee ability wants those to be different values. Maybe mana is only going to cost 1 here, and we can change those at will. For an update of our melee ability, let's draw, debug, and oh, I don't have this as a mono develop class, so we'll go debug.draw, and we'll just do a draw line, so it'll draw a line in front of our character. Now that I'm thinking about it, the more I want these abilities, I want them to have access to the game object that they're attached to, and I could set that up. Let's say when we activate ability, we pass it in. That'd be a reasonable way without having to get the entire mono develop or mono behavior class in here. Let's add another protected variable, and this will be of type game object, and we'll call it owning geo. Initialize that to null, and I don't want to keep the same functionalities here. I was doing the start and update because they were already there, but I will say like this is going to be our activate ability. And when we do activate it, we'll tell it, we'll pass in a game object for the one that owns it. Game object, and we'll just call this one geo, so that when we call activate, we will say owning geo is equal to the one that we passed in. And we'll need to update this to activate ability. We'll call this one update ability, just so it's a little bit more descriptive and doesn't get confused with the basic mono behavior stuff. So activate ability does require a game object passed in. Activate ability for our base, we'll pass in the geo that'll set our owning object. Then we're changing the mono cost to 1. And then in update, we have update ability now. And we have end ability as well. And our debug, for our update, we're just going to be drawing a line And then we'll also count down how many are times for the cooldown. Update ability, we'll draw a line. We're gonna just draw it forward from our owning character. Owning geo dot transform dot position. And draw a line just as a couple of them. We'll do a start and end and color. Ooh, and a duration. That might be fun. Duration might be good too. So our starting position is just our owning player's position. Our next one will be forward from our character's position. So we'll add on our owning geos, transform, forward, and we'll scale that up by, let's say, 3 units. Next up, we can tell it a color. Color dot. Let's see. What color would be good? Red would probably be pretty basic since this is representing like the area that it would attack. Red, and how long we want it. Let's say for 0.2 of a second, which I hope that's in seconds. I'm going to also have our ability detect if it hits something and deal damage to it. I'm going to do that as soon as we activate this ability. We'll do a simple line trace or raycast. Raycast. And that's from physics. Physics raycast. And let's see, we'll do origin and direction as well as distance. That one looks like it's probably going to work for us. We also want to know if we hit an object, so we need origin, direction, hit info, max distance. I don't necessarily want array, I want a line cast. Origin, direction, distance. Oh my god, so many to choose from. And an int for layer mask. I don't want specific layers. All right, so let's get started with an origin. That's our character's position. On the geo.transform.position. And we'll be basically making it go out this like this. So position, and I lost which one I wanted. I guess that'll work. So if we pass in a full ray, we'll create our own ray here. Ray, just give it a name for R, and equals new array. There's 2 overloads for that. Origin and direction. Well, we'll have it go from our character's position, transform.position, and in our character's forward direction, transform.forward. And then we'll just pass the ray in here. R for the first variable. Then this one requires distance second, then the layer mask. We hard-coded 3 as our distance, so we'll just do 3. And, oh, I don't want layer mask. I want the hit info and then distance. So I'll do this differently. And this is going to fill out this parameter here. We'll create a raycast hit structure here. We'll call it hit, use that suggested name. And this raycast is returning a bool. If we do the raycast and it detects a hit, we'll be able to use this hit function now, or this hit structure to check out what it hit. And we'll check out the, is there a game object straight from the hit? No, but there is collider, which we can get the game object from the collider. And awesome thing about game objects, if you didn't know, you can send them messages. What that means is you can tell it to call a function on another script, even though you don't know specifically what that function is. So I'm going to add a functionality to our player to take damage. Void. And yeah, we'll just do void, no return, and we'll call this take damage. We'll take in a float for how much damage to deal. And yes, we could have done it through an interface. Since I only have the few objects in my game, I don't necessarily need it as an interface, but totally, if I was making a much more complex game, I could have done the interface method as well. Damage. Well, whenever we take damage, we're going to just turn our mesh red. Take damage, get component. So I'll go over a couple of things that you might not have seen before with the sending messages. We're going to get the rendering component, get the material, set the color equal to red. And I only want it to stay that color for a certain period of time. So I'm going to add another helpful function right here to reset the color. And we'll just set our color back to white. And so instead of just setting the color when we take the damage, I'll also set up an invoke, which is a really great way of saying, I want to call a function, but in a few seconds. And you can tell it what function name you want to call, reset color, and after how much time you want to set back. So I'll have it turn just red for 0.3 seconds. All right. Then over in our ability, we can now, without just knowing about basic game object, we don't know about the player or take damage and or even an interface for that, but we can do send message. Send message, similar to invoke, also just allows you to type in a string for the function you want to call. We want to call take damage. And we see there are 4 different overloads. You can pass in anything you want for the value with this one. So we have a damage value, or I have mana cost, and I never added a damage variable. Let's go ahead and create one. We'll just make it public to keep it simpler. Damage. that's a float, equals, let's go 3.0f. Not like it matters, I'm not using damage in my player. My character doesn't even have any health. It's just going to turn that color. But just wanted to show you that you can pass information along with any message you send. All right. So it's going to tell it to take damage. And what I'm going to do is have this ability stop itself for a period of time. And we can do a couple of things with this, where since we have like a cooldown and a timed cooldown for, I'm going to add another private float. Private float for cooldown timer. And this will be similar to how we set up our idle state. So when we do tell it to activate an ability, we can go ahead and check if our cooldown timer, so if we have a cooldown, so is cooldown, and our timed cooldown is less than or equal to 0 when we try and activate, then we can activate. But if our cooldown timer is ever, not time cooldown, cooldown timer, then we can go ahead and activate and have it run. I'm going to add a else print string and debug log in this engine. Debug log tried to activate when on cooldown. Our update ability can then go ahead and use this ability. And so if we do successfully activate, we will do a couple of things. We'll make sure that our cooldown timer gets set back to our max time, so we can't activate it again until that timer's back down to 0. Our time cooldown is what I named our max time. And then our update, we'll just have it tick down that timer. Cooldown timer minus equals time dot delta time. And our end ability, we don't have anything in there right now. We may think of something later. Maybe have like a particle effect spawn or something. But our update should be good. So now, if I want our agent to have this melee ability, we can go ahead and add it to our abilities list. Dictionary, not a new dictionary, our abilities. We'll add a melee type of attack right here. Our key will be slash or stab. We'll add a value, which this one needs to be a new ability, but specifically a melee ability. And I just called it melee, not melee ability. Interesting. New melee. And we'll go ahead and have it activate this attack or this ability whenever we press a certain button, all of our agents will try and attack. So we'll go to update. Or I don't have a follow set up in this one, so that won't be good. So yeah, we'll just do it for update, which I'm at and didn't even realize. Uncomment this so we can just add a key press to have our enemies attack. I do want base update, but I don't want space. I'll keep space. We'll just tell it to activate that ability. Abilities. Sub. I called it stab. So every frame it's going to try and tell it to use this ability whenever we press space. I don't even need a key press. I'm going to just have it constantly always trying to stab. So we can check out that cooldown at work. Stab, we'll have it activate ability. We do need to pass it a game object. Well, we're in a game object, so we can get that game object from the script and have it activate that ability. Then our ability itself is handling all of its kind of functionality where it's doing the raycast, and while it's updating, it's going to draw the line. So I would need to update our ability as well. So our abilities I would normally have current active rather than hard coding it like stab every frame, but not trying to take up too much time. We'll call update. So every frame it'll try and activate as well as update. And our update, I believe, we'll notice some issues when it tries to access our owning geo. If it failed the activate ability. So our activate ability will change a little bit. We'll have this, actually, we can set up just a custom timer to call update repeating. We'll have this one invoke as well. So our character doesn't have to call it. Invoke. Not sure why it's doing. Oh, I can't invoke from a non. That's why. Yeah, I can't invoke from a non mono behavior class. So that gets added in mono behavior. So I won't be able to do that here. Darn it. I was hoping for a little bit easier method of doing that. Sorry, I am just designing this off the top of my head. So a couple of things going back and forth of how I would have changed things. So we will just call update every frame. We'll add a check inside the ability so that activate ability, we'll call activate. Our update, we'll do a check if our cooldown timer is less than or equal to 0. We will get rid of the owning geo. Well, let's just call end ability. End ability will allow it to get a different owning character or owning game object. We'll initialize that to null. That means the ability is over. And our update ability will make sure that this can only run if we do have a proper owning character. So that when end is called, it'll stop running any update that we have. All right. So a couple of things on here. I think that's about it, actually. Don't need our aggro trigger, don't need the manager. Just every frame our agent's going to try and stab, as well as make sure that it updates its current ability. And let's check this out. If we play, I am seeing red lines in the scene. So it's got that red line constantly going. I don't remember what I put the cooldowns to. So we may need to change our cooldown. Ability, what was it doing in begin play if the cooldown timer was all good? Cooldown time is every 2 seconds. I want it to be, let's say it can only do it 5 seconds away. And activate ability, calls the base, and then is also doing the raycast here when we first activate. So I want to make sure it only does all that stuff if our owner's been set. If owning geo, and so I think I have this as a duration for 0.2 as well. I'm going to just, since this is being called every single frame, I will just draw the line every single frame rather than sticking it around for 0.2 seconds. And our end ability just calls base, which nulls out the actual end. Update should always update ability for the base, because that's doing the timer. And only want it to draw the line when that's good. All right. So hopefully it's not going to draw that line every frame. So, now is it not drawing a line at all? Oh boy. My math is wrong somewhere. So let's see whenever it's trying to do this and this, and actually walk through how it's adding that ability or trying to activate the ability. Enable debugging. And I do not want to try and test this with all my other agents running, so I'm going to just turn off these 2 areas so we can test it on just this one agent. Press play, tries to activate. Oh, I tried to activate and I'm passing in the owning geo, but I'm checking if it's already been set. So it's never activating in general. Nice. I can do the base activate before we do our overridden stuff here. So that our base activate does that timer check, sets the owning geo if it was good, as well as the countdown time. Now we should see it working on time. Removing the breakpoints. Press play. And we got that red line out. Should see after 2 seconds. I never added anything to end the ability, did I? However, our update should end it after 2 seconds, but it's not. Call update, tick down time. Once that's good, ends the ability, resets owning geo to null. And then we can activate again. So it's activating immediately as soon as it's finished. And that is because we have this straighten update. So rather than that, let's have it try and attack every 3 seconds. Public, void, oh, don't even need to be public. Void, attack, or try attack. Let's do it that way. Try attack. Is when we'll call our activate. And we'll have that from our start. Go ahead and tell it to invoke that. And not just invoke, but invoke also has an invoke repeating for if you want it to happen multiple times. I'm going to say try to attack. How much time for the initial delay? Well, I don't want any initial delay. How fast do we want it to repeat? Let's go every 3 seconds. And I'm just choosing numbers that I believe will work together since our cooldown time is 5 seconds. That means it should attack just with a bit of a delay now in between. All right. So it attacked successfully. It's not attacking now, but then attacked a second later once it got to 6 seconds and the cooldown had finished. Oh. So we are seeing that we are getting an error. Take damage has no receiver. Oh, so as we can see, we're trying to send this message to anything it detects an overlap with. So that means we're calling take damage on objects such as the wall there or the little nav point here, telling it to try and take damage. And it is giving us a warning like, hey, it has no receiver. So as we can see, it just ignored that message. Errors are bad. So let's make sure it is a player before we try and attack it. We'll only do the take damage if it hits a player. If the hit dot collider or game object collider get component of the player. We'll only be looking exclusively for players now. Ideally, you would have the take damage interface so that anything that has that function would be taking damage, and we wouldn't need to add a bunch of other ifs here for a whole bunch of different types of objects in our game. But our player is the only one with it right now, so we'll just check it for that. All right, I'm gonna get my player moved in here. And, and it's paused because I forgot I did that last time. But if we get into the ability, when it activates. And our take damage is not happening. So our player is not turning red. So let's figure out why that's not happening. Might be because it's hitting itself. Huh. Well, we'll see if this ever gets sent. Play that. Give our game a play. Oh. Did it pause? Oh, it's doing an update ability. Forgot I had a breakpoint down there. Pausing all our breakpoints that we left over from last time. Continue playing. And now our agent is paused. It's just doing that ability timer still on or off because I'm not taking into account the state. If we get within range, and that is not quite overlapping. Now it's very clearly overlapping, but our raycast was detecting a different object. So our ability, never getting to this line, raycast is not detecting any hit. Do I have something wrong with this here? If owning geo is set, okay. Mana cost for array, getting our owning geo's positions, casting that outward, and this should return true. It is, okay. The collider it hit is the aggro trigger. Ooh. Aggro trigger does not have that component. So we probably need a multi-hit. So raycast is just going to give us the first object it hits for raycast info. It's getting more and more complex the more I'm looking at it. So we will need to change it so that it returns multiple things that it hits in case we have that one layer. We could do a layer mask. I don't want to get into that setup. That's going to take a little while. But raycast, there's raycast. There is a line cast. Oh, god dang it. I could disable the thing. I was hoping for raycast. All is going to return an array of raycast hits. So raycast all is how you can find multiple objects hitting, and then you can loop through each one looking for if it is a player or if it could take damage. So, but rather than doing that, I will, I guess, keep it a little bit simpler and just do the method of disabling our aggro trigger. And when I play, I will select that agent And I will pause that agent, just so we have that right here. Oh, and so it did activate the pause again. Why did it? Something was weird there. Why did it reactivate? I thought I disabled the aggro trigger. Oh, I did it while I was playing. Dang it. Disable the aggro trigger. Get in here. Oh, and he's turning away from me right at the last second because of the object detection. It's making it really hard to let you hit me if you're avoiding me. Oh, we'll fix that. Tell you not to avoid obstacles. All right. And still not good. Why are you not hitting? What collider are you hitting that's not the player? Ideally, you would set up a layer mask and have this be on a different layer. But I was hoping this would be a quick test. And it just walked through the capsule again. What? Why is it not even hitting anything? There we go. What collider is it hitting? A capsule collider from the player. All right. And so it is going to send that message. Step into, we get over into our player. Should be setting the color to red. But it didn't. Player's told to take damage again. Or no, that was the capsule. No, take damage is not going to return anything, but we saw it getting into the player get component, set the color to red. So there might be something weird with our player, how we're trying to set our color on our player. I don't see anything weird there. Getting the rendering component, getting the material color, setting it red. We'll add a breakpoint here. We should see it run that code on our player. And we hit it. Hit the ability. I'm going to just remove that breakpoint so we can continue. And yeah, it should be getting the component, getting the material, setting the material to a color. I guess maybe this one is using a weird material. It's probably using the default. So that one will have an albedo that it uses for its color. Oh, okay. Should be fine. Although, what material is this one using? The nav agent material. Let's throw our nav agent material on there, because I believe that is set to an opaque mode. Albedo is the way we access the color. Huh. Let me do a quick test and say our player, when we start, try and set it to a different color. Okay, component, render, material, color, In fact, let's use the set color command. Name ID. Can't remember the exact specifics of that, but let's just use property instead then. Color, let's have it be green when we start. Now, if that doesn't change the color, then definitely something weird going on with our player's material or something like that. It is changing green. Fantastic. So it's nothing to do with that. It's definitely something else. Why? Did I spell this weird? I want to copy this exact line. Whoops. Control C, Control V. I'm going to set it red and then green, which that is the exact same. It's weird. Attach that. We should see it run. Our reset color might have been not delayed properly. I guess let's delay it for 10 seconds. And point F or point OF. And we are debugging here. So save everything here. Go back over here and this better be it. So we're green when we start. When we run into it, let me get in front of you. Darn you. That line is still not overlapping. That's definitely a problem where it's not liking that line. And I guess we won't use the send message. It may have glitched out the first time it does that when it tried to send a message incorrectly. We do have an owning object. Shoot out. If we are hitting the player, let's just call the player's message. Take damage. And we will need it public to call it from another script. Suppose that could have been an issue, but I could have sworn we were getting here before. Make sure to call it now that we made it public. Take damage. However much damage you have. Finally. Stand here, he's not attacking, is attacking, and nothing. So it's definitely an issue with that collision not happening on our player. So this is never being called. And I only checked it when it hit the first collider it found was the, you know what? It might still have the collider active. Aggro trigger itself is not active, but collider's still there. Don't think that would cause an issue. It was getting into the capsule collider, but Wow, this is taking a much longer time than I would like. Okay, so raycast detected a hit. What it actually hit. Capsule collider from our player. Step into. We are telling it to take damage. Change the color green, change the color red. Then we say invoke reset color, which that should delay until, oh, so it's red and waiting, what did I put, 10 seconds on this? So it is changing, just was a pain to get the exact right spot to hit that. Because it only happens on activate ability. That's where I was getting confused. My problem is I was not taking into account activate ability only happens the very first frame it's activated. Update ability is where we're drawing our line. So that line was there, but it wasn't actually doing the raycast at that time. It only activates when it first fires out that raycast. Okay, that's making a lot more sense now. If we did our raycast inside the entire time we're drawing our line, we'll have a much better experience, but we also don't necessarily want our character or our enemy trying to deal damage that quickly. So now with that, I'm going to go back to our player. I don't need to be a 10-second delay anymore. We'll do a 3-second delay. And when it shows damage, we'll just have it flicker for 1/10 of a second. Don't need the extra turn green. Don't need to turn green on start. And save that. Our agent, I am going to tweak its time so that it can only do the invoke, or it will only be able to attack. I do want it to only attack relatively, not every 3 seconds, but every 2 seconds, we'll say. And our ability itself for the cooldown, I think that's what, like a 5-second cooldown. We'll drop that down to a 4-second cooldown. All right. I let that run in, and we see it is damaging anytime we're inside that the raycast, because it's doing that damage every single frame that it has that ray out, which should be turning on and off, unless my 2-second to 4-second change was backwards. No, should be off for 2 seconds, then on for 2 seconds, then off for 2 seconds, then on for 2 seconds. Okay. Yep, and as we can see, our console itself is letting us know anytime, like the times it was trying to activate an ability. It's literally every frame that's like just smashing a button on your keyboard to try and activate. But we do see it doing that delay where it has to wait those 4 seconds of cooldown before it can activate again. Is that the kind of a ability type thing you were thinking of? I know I kind of just went and did it, but. typically when I think of abilities, I'm thinking of actions the player can do based off cooldowns, based off time, League of Legends style, World of Warcraft style, uh, something that would have a typical cooldown or some sort of stat change based on when the player presses a button. All right. So that took a bit longer than I wanted because I was running into a couple of things I didn't plan for. But that's how it always goes with coding and coming up with some game ideas and things. That pretty much wraps it up for today. So hopefully you enjoyed that and found out about some new things. The send message would have worked fine. I just apparently was forgetting that activate ability was only being called the very first frame we try and activate, and that's where we were doing our raycasting. Okay then. Well, I hope you enjoyed the class overall and learned some new things, and I will hopefully not see you again next month, but if you do ever have something you want to talk about, feel free to reach out to me on email or Discord or anything like that. Have a great time, everybody, and I wish you luck in your future classes.